Objective 13, level 2, we are solving for different variables. So for those of you in physics, this is actually going to come in really handy for you, and you're going to see this in physics. So this is going to help you a lot. Okay, so number one, we got to solve for z. So just like when you solve for any other variable, like when you're solving for y, you're determining the value of y, you want to isolate that variable. So like if you had 2 times x minus 4 equals 10, and you want to solve for x, you want to isolate that variable. That's the same thing that we're doing here. You want to isolate a variable. So here, I want to isolate z. I want to get z by itself. When you're doing this with multiple variables, normally we would go ahead and distribute a number out in front of parentheses. Instead, what I want to do here is I want to get rid of this by multiplying by the reciprocal. So in order to do that, the reciprocal of 5 over 4 is, 4 over 5 is 5 over 4. So if I multiply both sides by 5 over 4, now this fraction on the right-hand side is gone, and I'm going to be left with 5 over 4a equals c minus z. So right away, that 5/4 is gone, and I am back. I can get at that z that I'm solving for. Okay, so again, I want to get this guy by itself. So in order for the c to become a 0, it's a positive c, so I want to go ahead and subtract the c from both sides. And since those are not like terms, I'm going to write them as two separate terms. Now you could have done this as well. You could have written it like this. Okay, but I'm just going to leave it as the first way. I like to have that first term to be positive, but that's me, and I know it's different. So you don't have to do that. Know that the other way is correct as well. Okay, so now the c's are 0, so those are gone, and I still have a negative z out in front. So if you remember when we were solving for variables, if we've got negative x equals 4, we would just say x equals negative 4. You change the signs of everything, basically just dividing by negative 1. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1. You got to do everything divided by negative 1. If I can say divide by negative 1 one more time, I will. So we got negative 5 over 4a plus c now equals a positive z. So now that I've got z by itself, my answer is negative 5 over 4a plus c. So let's go ahead and go over to number 2. We want to solve for t, so we want to get at this variable. So just like before, I want to get rid of this 2, so I can either divide by 2 or how I like to look at this, since I've got so many variables and so many fractions sometimes, I want to multiply by the reciprocal. It just helps me keep my fractions in line. So now this 2 is going to be gone, and I'm going to be left with t squared equals r over 2s. Okay, so you can see how that was easy, multiplying straight across. Sometimes students get confused. If I divide by 2 here, how do I divide by 2 on the right-hand side? So it might be easier just to think multiply by the reciprocal in order to clear that number away from the variable that you're trying to solve for. The last and final step here is to get rid of that squared. So in order to do that, I'm going to square root both sides. So t squared with the square root is just going to be t. And for now, I'm just going to let you leave this as r over 2s with the square root over the whole thing. So just remember that it's going to be over the whole thing. You don't have to rationalize. You don't have to square the top and square the bottom. You can leave it just like this. And last but not least, solving for a. Anytime you've got a fraction and the variable that you want to solve for is on the bottom, go ahead and cross multiply, and that really goes for anything. Anytime you have a fraction and you're solving for a variable, and you got variables both on the top and the bottom, go ahead and cross multiply and get rid of those fractions. So I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply here. Capital T times 2 minus a equals 1 times 4 plus b. And since the variable that I'm solving for is inside the parentheses, here's what I'm going to do. I am not going to distribute again the t, just like that first one. I'm not going to do that. Instead of doing that, I'm going to go ahead and divide by t on both sides because that t is being multiplied to that group. I'm going to divide by t here. So now that t gets divided out, and I'm left with 2 minus a equals this 1 here. Doesn't really do anything, so I can drop that. 1 plus 4 plus b over t. Okay, So I've gotten into that a, and now what I want to do is I want to get that a by itself, so I make this 2 become 0 by subtracting 2 on both sides. So you're going to be left with negative a equals 4 plus b over t minus 2. So that 2 is all by itself. It has nothing to do with that fraction, but you're just subtracting 2 from it. So it doesn't go on the top, it doesn't go on the bottom, it just goes on the end. And then just like before, you're going to divide both sides by negative 1, changing all the signs of everything. So your final answer will be a equals negative 4 plus b, and you want to put that in parentheses, over t plus 2. So that's level 2. So go ahead and practice those in your on your checklist, and then go ahead and take the quiz and see how you do.